Good morning, children. Today we are going to carry on looking at the instructional text, and specifically we are going to be looking at the type of words which are used in instructions. So we are going to be learning to recognize and use imperative verbs. Imperative verbs. So first, let's have a look at the text which you analysed yesterday at home. We all had the instructions on how to make the paper mache globe, and we had to look at them and look at the different parts of the instructional text. So let's remind ourselves, children, what do we call this part of the instructions? That's right, it's called the title. Very good. That's the easiest part of the instructions, really, the title. Now, usually we have a little paragraph at the very beginning which kind of introduces us and tells us a little bit about these instructions. And that's what we have in these instructions here. So we don't have the top tip, like we had in the instructions that we looked at together in the lesson, but these instructions at which you looked independently, we have a little introduction. After that, the next part, children, is, that's right, the you will need. So that is our list. If this was a recipe, this would be the list of the ingredients, because this is not a recipe, it is a list of all the items that we need to complete the task. And then finally, we have all the different steps that we need to follow to complete the instructions. Now, children, let's have a look at it together. Can you see, what do we have at the beginning of each step here? That's right, we have a number. So all of these instructions are numbered so that we know in which order we have to follow them. Now, in the instructions that we looked at yesterday together as a class, we didn't have the numbers. So what did we have to separate each instruction? That's right, we had the bullet points. So at the beginning of each instruction, we had a bullet point. So to separate the instructions, the steps of each instruction, we can either use the numbers or we can use the bullet points. Now, children, looking at all our instructions, one of your tasks yesterday was to identify all the verbs. All the verbs. And you had to highlight them in green. The children, can you think which part of this instructional text were all your verbs in? Did you find all your verbs in the title, the introduction, the list of items you need, or in the steps to follow? That's right, very good. You would have found all of the verbs in this part of the instructions, all the steps that you had to follow. In fact, if we have a look at the very first step together, first of all, blow up the balloon gently, don't let it burst. How many different verbs did you manage to find in just that first step? I'm going to try to highlight them for us. So let me try to change this and go back to the text. Now, if you highlighted, and now it's not going to work. If you highlighted blow up, don't, let, and burst, you would have found all the verbs just in the first step. So let's try that again. Let's see if it's going to let me do the highlighting. It might do. So blow up, don't, which is also our contraction, let, and burst. How many verbs would you have found in just the first step? One, because blow up is one verb together. In fact, we call it a phrasal verb, but we don't have to worry about it too much. But that makes one verb. Don't, let, and burst would be 4 verbs in just the first step of the instructions, children. So let's have a look at a PowerPoint together, children. So as I explained to you today, we are going to be looking at imperative verbs. And I hear you ask, what are imperative verbs? Well, we know that verbs are words which describe action, occurrence, or state. We usually focus on the action, children. That's the easiest way for us to remember verbs. So we know that verbs are action words. So let's have a look at these verbs. The ice cream is melting. The verb here is melting. That's the action word. The snowman wears a hat. Wears is the verb. That's the action word. Can you think of any other verbs? Very good. You're all super duper at verbs, because verbs are something that you learned in year 1. So this is just building on our knowledge from year 1. So what is an imperative verb? Well, in fact, another way of calling imperative verbs is bossy verbs. Bossy verbs, children. And I'm sure you'll remember that. So an imperative verb is a bossy verb. Can you repeat that, children? Very good. They are bossy verbs because they tell us what we have to do. They boss us about, those verbs. They're often seen at the beginning of a sentence and create a command sentence. So let's have a look together, children. We have 4 commands here. Eat your lunch, tidy the cloakroom, write today's date, walk home after school. We know that all of these are command sentences because they begin with verb. In fact, they begin with an imperative verb. Very good. Well done, children. So let's have a go at spotting some imperative verbs. Can you spot imperative verbs in these sentences? Let me see if I can get a highlighter again. Okay, children. So, go outside to play. Can you spot the verb in that sentence? Very good. Go is the verb in that sentence. Spot the difference between these pictures. Where is the imperative verb? Very good. Spot. Lovely. Ask your dad what he thinks. Where is the imperative verb or the bossy verb? Super. Ask would be the bossy or the imperative verb. Well done. Kick the ball into the goal. Where is the imperative verb? Kick. Well done. And finally, surprise your friend to cheer them up. Where is the imperative or the bossy verb? Surprise. Super. So all of these verbs are imperative verbs because they tell us to do something. They tell us that we must do something. So, which part of the sentence are they all in? That's right, the bossy verbs are at the beginning of the sentence. And do you remember what type of a sentence this is? A command. Very good. It is a command. Well done, children. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. Where can we see imperative verbs? Well, we find them in sets of instructions, as we found yesterday when we were highlighting all the verbs in our instructions. We find them in recipes, and we also would hear them in conversation, especially if somebody is telling us to do something. Let's have a little practice, children. Here we have a command, but there is no imperative verb at the beginning. Can you think of an imperative verb which would fit into the sentence? Something up and walk away. What imperative verb can you think of? Some lovely examples there. Well done, children. We could have said get up and walk away, stand up and walk away, tidy up and walk away. And I'm sure you have thought of many other examples. Lovely, children. So let me explain to you what your task at home is going to be. In your packs, which you have picked up before the half term, you would find 3 differentiated sheets, all entitled imperative verbs. There are 3 sheets because they are differentiated based on how difficult they are. So 1 star means the easiest task, 2 stars means medium task, and 3 stars means the most challenging task. So let's have a look together. What are they? In the easiest task, you need to circle the imperative verbs in these commands. And we all know which part of the sentence we can be looking for the imperative verbs. Then you need to have a go at adding an imperative verb to each of these commands and checking that they make sense. Do you remember that the imperative verbs are at the beginning of each of these commands? So think about what letter you will write them with. The medium task is similar, as in you need to think of an imperative verb for each of these commands, and then you have the word recipe in the middle. And your task is to think of 4 imperative verbs that you may find in a recipe. If you were baking something or cooking something, what sort of imperative verbs would you find in a recipe? The most challenging task gives you 4 different scenarios, and you have to think of 4 different imperative verbs that could be used in all those 4 scenarios. And finally, you need to think of 3 imperative verbs that you could use to turn these sentences into commands. Once you have done that, once you have completed the task which is most appropriate for you, then have a look at our PowerPoint together. I will attach it to the tapestry post and have a go at 2 interactive tasks there. Here you need to think of different imperative verbs to use in those 3 command sentences, and then have a go at spinning the wheel. I'm trying to get my mouse, but it's disappeared somewhere. Spinning the wheel, children, and when you spin the wheel, I'll show you how to do it. Click to spin the wheel, and then write a command which contains the verb that you have landed on. How many different ways can you use that imperative verb? So can you use the imperative verb switch to write as many as 5 commands, children? Have a go. Challenge yourself. So your extension task is the spinning the wheel task in the PowerPoint, children. Have a go at spinning the wheel at least 5 times and have a go at writing command sentences for each of those words, children. Very much looking forward to seeing all your work on the tapestry today. Bye for now.